Commander Kael'thas just ordered a station-wide lockdown because the human smiled at the growling sound behind her. All Vrexian personnel, Emergency Protocol 7. Kael'thas barked into the station-wide comm, his clawed hand slamming the lockdown sequence. On the security feed before him, the human, according to YouTube analytics, 98% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. Emma Johnson, Environmental Services Technician, had turned around in the maintenance corridor and was smiling at his son. His son, who was displaying juvenile threat posture. His son, whose claws could disembowel a grown Calarian in seconds. His son, who was currently making his first serious attempt at a dominance growl. And the human was smiling. Security Team Alpha, converge on Section 7, maintenance level. Non-lethal suppression only. Kael'thas's secondary hearts were hammering. We have a Code Amber situation, human in direct confrontation with juvenile Vrexian. Sir, his second-in-command clicked over the comm, confusion evident in his voice. Code Amber is for... I know what Code Amber is for! Kael'thas watched the screen, his predatory instincts screaming. Code Amber, imminent loss of sentient life due to predator encounter. He'd never thought he'd use it for his own offspring, but the human clearly had no idea what she was facing. On screen, Emma Johnson set down her cleaning equipment and crouched to the floor, bringing herself to eye level with young Vrex. Azila! Kael'thas roared, switching channels. Your son is in Section 7 and the human is... He struggled for words. She's engaging with him. His mate's response was immediate and panicked. I'm 3 sections away. Kael, the protocols... Forget the protocols. The security feed showed Emma tilting her head, and Kael'thas felt his blood freeze as he heard her voice through the audio pickup. Oh, you're practicing. Emma's tone was warm, almost delighted. That's so brave of you. Young Vrex's growl faltered, confusion evident in the way his head crest lowered slightly. He was barely 6 months old by human reckoning, but already stood waist-high to the human female. His claws, each one capable of puncturing reinforced hull plating, were extended. His teeth, designed to crush bone, were bared, and Emma Johnson was calling him brave. Human Johnson. Kael'thas forced his voice into what he hoped was a calm register over the local comm. Please remain completely still. Do not make eye contact. Do not show fear. We have personnel en route to extract you safely. Emma glanced up at the comm speaker, her face scrunching in that expression humans made when confused. Extract me? From what? She looked back at young Vrex, who had taken a cautious step forward. He's fine. He's just trying to sound scary. Trying to sound... He is scary. Kael'thas didn't mean to roar, but his command training evaporated in the face of watching a human treat his lethal offspring like... Look at those little teeth, Emma continued, apparently oblivious to Kael'thas's breakdown. She was sitting fully on the floor now, cross-legged in that way humans did, her posture completely open and vulnerable. You're working so hard on that growl, aren't you? Young Vrex stopped, his head tilting to mirror Emma's earlier gesture. His growl tapered off into confused silence. In all his short life, every being he'd encountered had responded to his threat displays with appropriate fear or defensive aggression. This human was doing neither. Security Alpha ETA, Kael'thas demanded. 30 seconds, Commander. But sir, the human is... I can see what the human is doing. Kael'thas watched as Emma slowly extended her hand, palm up, toward his son. Every instinct he possessed screamed that he was about to witness a mauling. Young Vrex might be a juvenile, but Vrexian juveniles had killed adult prey animals since before his species reached the stars. It was how they learned. The security feed captured the moment in excruciating detail. Emma's hand, small and soft-skinned and utterly defenseless, held steady as young Vrex leaned forward to sniff it. The cub's nostrils flared, taking in her scent. His eyes, triple-lidded and designed for tracking wounded prey in low light, fixed on her face. Emma, no! Azila burst onto the security channel, her own breathing ragged as she ran. "Please, he doesn't understand what you are. He'll think you're prey." Emma laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, sure, I can see he's a predator species, but he's what, 6 months old?" She wiggled her fingers slightly, and young Vrex jerked back, startled. Then, cautiously, he leaned in again, more interested than aggressive now. "He's a baby. Yeah, he's got claws and teeth, but look at him. He's just trying to figure me out." Kael'thas felt something in his worldview crack. In 6 months, he and Azila had maintained proper defensive distance from their offspring, as was traditional. They monitored him, ensured he had adequate nutrition and territory, corrected aggressive overreach with displays of superior dominance. This was how Vrexians raised their young, with respect for their dangerous nature, with recognition that they were small predators who would one day be large predators. Never had it occurred to Kael'thas to call his son a baby. "Commander, we're in position," Security Alpha reported. "Tranquilizer rifles ready, awaiting your order." On screen, Emma had pulled something from her work belt, her lunch container. She opened it, the movement slow and deliberate, and broke off a piece of what appeared to be some earth plant matter wrapped in compressed grain. "Want to try?" she offered to young Vrex. "It's peanut butter and jelly. Not sure if you can eat it, but it's pretty good." Young Vrex's hunting crouch shifted, his tail, which had been rigid with aggressive intent, lowered slightly, uncertainly. He took another step forward, and then he sat down, Azila breathed over the comm. She'd arrived at the corridor entrance. Kael'thas could see her on the secondary feed, but she'd frozen just outside the doorway. "Kael, our son sat down." Young Vrex had indeed sat, his haunches folding in that way that adult Vrexians did when they were contemplating rather than hunting. His head was tilted almost perpendicular now, watching as Emma held out the strange earth food. "Commander," Security Alpha pressed. "Your orders?" Kael'thas couldn't speak. He was watching his son, his dangerous, lethal, carefully monitored son, gently take the food from Emma's hand with the tips of his teeth. Young Vrex's jaw could have closed on her fingers, could have severed them in an instant. Instead, he backed up 2 steps, the food in his mouth, and sat down again to chew it. Emma grinned, that expression humans did that showed their blunt teeth. On any other species, showing teeth was a threat display. Somehow, on humans, it meant pleasure. "Good boy. See, it's not scary. I'm not scary. You're the one practicing being fierce." "Stand down, Security Alpha," Kael'thas heard himself say. "Maintain position, but do not engage." "Sir, the human—" "I said stand down." Azila had moved into the corridor now, her movements slow and careful. Every line of her body screamed protective maternal instinct, warring with complete confusion. "Emma," she said softly, using the human's individual name rather than title. "That's my son. He's deadly, even to us." Emma looked up at Azila, then back at young Vrex, who had finished the food and was now edging closer to Emma again. "Deadly?" Emma actually reached out, and scratched behind the ridge of young Vrex's auditory sensors. The sound young Vrex made shattered every piece of Vrexian child-rearing doctrine Kael'thas had ever learned. It was a chirp, a contented, pleased, happy chirp that Vrexian cubs made when they were comfortable and satisfied. Kael'thas had heard his son make that sound exactly twice, once when he'd hatched, and once after his first successful hunt simulation, never in response to physical affection. Because Vrexians didn't give physical affection to their young. "Oh my God," Emma said, her voice going soft in that way humans did when they encountered something they found endearing. "He just wanted attention. Nobody was playing with him, were they?" 7 decks away, in the security command center, Kael'thas sat down heavily in his command chair. Around him, his security team was staring at their screens in silence, watching the impossible unfold. "Playing," Azila repeated, moving closer. She was within striking distance now, but young Vrex had his eyes closed, leaning into Emma's scratching hand. We maintain appropriate distance until maturity enables safe social interaction. Emma's hand paused. She looked up at Azila, and Kael'thas saw something in the human's expression shift. Something that looked almost like sadness. Wait, you don't cuddle him? You don't play with him? No wonder he's acting out. Acting out. Azila knelt slowly, her own hand extending tentatively toward young Vrex. Their son opened his eyes, chirped again, and pressed his head into Emma's hand more insistently, as if to say, "Don't stop." "Yeah," Emma said, resuming her scratching. Young Vrex's tail began to move, not in aggressive lashes, but in slow, pleased waves. He's not trying to be threatening, he's trying to connect with you. The growling, it's practice, sure, but it's also him trying to get your attention. Like, "Look at me. Look what I can do. Are you proud?" The security feed captured Azila's expression perfectly. It was the look of someone whose entire understanding of the world had just been turned inside out. Young Vrex, perhaps sensing his mother's proximity, turned to look at her. He opened his mouth and produced another growl, but this one was different. Shorter, almost questioning. Then he looked back at Emma expectantly. Emma laughed again. "Good job, buddy. Very fierce. Your mom's definitely impressed." And young Vrex's tail wagged. The station-wide emergency channel exploded with chatter. "Command, this is Medical Bay 3. We're seeing the security feed. The human is petting the Vrexian juvenile? Engineering here. Someone please confirm this isn't a simulation glitch." Kael'thas ignored them all, his eyes fixed on the screen where Emma Johnson had somehow transformed his son from a threat into whatever this was. Young Vrex had rolled partially onto his back, exposing his underbelly, a position of absolute trust among Vrexians, one never shown to anyone outside of mating pairs. And he was showing it to the human who'd met him 10 minutes ago. "Azila," Kael'thas said into his private channel. "What is happening?" On screen, Azila was staring at her own hand, now resting on young Vrex's flank. Their son had permitted her touch without the usual defensive flinch. "I don't know. Kyle, I can feel his heartbeat. When have we ever been close enough to feel his heartbeat?" Emma had produced a small length of cord from her equipment belt and was dangling it above young Vrex. The cub's eyes locked onto it, his hunting instincts engaging. But when he pounced, claws carefully sheathed, Emma laughed and praised him. "Got it. You're so fast." "This is Station Commander R. Hill," a new voice cut through the emergency channel. "Someone explain why we're in lockdown because a human is having a play session." Kael'thas found his voice. "Sir, the situation is unprecedented. Human Johnson encountered a juvenile Vrexian displaying threat postures and responded by befriending him." "Befriending," R. Hill repeated flatly. "You called a code amber because a human made friends with a child. He's not a child. He's a juvenile apex predator." Kael'thas's claws dug into his armrest. Young Vrex has 12 centimeters of cutting claws, triple-ridged teeth designed to crush spinal columns, and reactive neural pathways that enable him to track and kill prey 30 times his size. That human should be having a tea party, apparently, R. Hill observed dryly. "I'm watching the feed, Commander. Your apex predator is currently trying to catch a piece of string." Emma dragged the cord across the floor, and young Vrex bounded after it with enthusiasm that looked disturbingly playful. When he caught it, he looked to Emma for approval, his tail still doing that pleased wave motion. "Very good," Emma cooed. "Such a good hunter." Young Vrex chirped and released the cord, waiting for her to drag it again. "What has she done to him?" Kael'thas breathed. Azila, still kneeling beside Emma, looked up at the security camera. "She's playing with him, Kale, like he's a companion rather than a threat." "But he is a threat. You remember the safety protocols, the defensive barriers." "He was 3 days old and startled," Azila said softly. "We treated him like a hostile from birth because that's what we're taught. What if we were wrong?" The security feed picked up Emma's next words clearly. "He's just a baby who didn't know how to ask for cuddles, weren't you, sweetie?" She ruffled young Vrex's crest, and he made a sound somewhere between a purr and a rumble, entirely contented. "Human Johnson," Kael'thas said into the corridor comm. "How are you doing that?" Emma looked up, her hand still scratching behind young Vrex's auditory ridges. "Doing what? Playing with him. It's not complicated. He's a kid. Kids need attention and boundaries and play. He has claws that can slice through battle armor. Yeah, and human toddlers have teeth, and tiny kids throw rocks, and teenagers learn to drive vehicles that can kill people." Emma shrugged. "We still hug them. We still teach them. We still play with them. He's been doing the equivalent of a child screaming, 'Look at me.' And you guys have been treating it like an assassination attempt." The silence on the command channel was deafening. Finally, our heel spoke. "Commander Kael'thas, I'm lifting the lockdown, but I want a full report explaining how a maintenance technician solved what you've been calling a behavioral crisis in your offspring for 4 months." The lockdown sirens died. "I don't have an explanation, sir," Kael'thas admitted. "Every protocol we have is based on maintaining safe distance until they reach social maturity at age 3. The concept of playing with them before then is working beautifully," Rahil interrupted. "I can see that from here." On screen, Azila had shifted to sit beside Emma. Emma was teaching her how to dangle the cord. "See? Let him catch it sometimes. The fun is in the chase, but he needs to succeed too. Builds confidence." Young Vrex pounced, caught the cord, and looked at his mother with pride. Azila's hand trembled as she reached out to touch his head. Good hunting?" The cub's entire body wriggled with pleasure. "That's it," Emma encouraged. "Positive reinforcement. He's learning and you're bonding." "Bonding," Azila repeated, her voice thick with emotion. "We're supposed to maintain distance for his safety and ours." Emma's expression turned gentle. "Or maybe that's why he's been acting out. Kids who feel isolated get aggressive. They test boundaries because they want connection and don't know how else to get it." Young Vrex attempted another practice growl at Emma, but his tail was wagging, his eyes bright with playfulness. Emma growled back, a poor imitation. Young Vrex startled, then chirped with delight, and play pounced at her hand. "By the ancestors," Kael'thas muttered. "She's established play-fighting protocols with him." His security second leaned over. "Sir, we're getting requests from other Vrexian families on station. 7 of them have juveniles. They're asking if the human could revolutionize our entire species' approach to child-rearing in an afternoon." Kael'thas dragged his hand down his face. "Why not? Apparently that's just a normal Tuesday for them." On the feed, Emma was demonstrating gentle paws to young Vrex. She'd tap him lightly, and when he tapped back with claws sheathed, she praised him. When his claws extended, she made a soft negative sound and withdrew. Within minutes, young Vrex was actively controlling his claw extension. "This is impossible," Kael'thas said. "We've spent 6 months trying to condition appropriate claw control. She's teaching it like it's a game." "Because to her, it is," Azila said through the comm. "Kael, she keeps calling him good boy. She's using positive reinforcement instead of dominance correction, and it's working." Young Vrex demonstrated his new skill by gently tapping Emma's hand, claws fully retracted. Emma grinned and tapped him back on the nose. "Perfect. You're so smart." The cub's chest puffed up with obvious pride. "Process what?" Rahil asked over the command channel. "That humans have an instinct for domesticating dangerous species. Commander, they did it to their own planet's apex predators thousands of years ago." Azila was now holding young Vrex, actually holding him, with the cub's head resting against her shoulder. He was making that contented rumble purr continuously. "Kael, when was the last time we held him?" Kael'thas couldn't answer. The truth was they never had. Not after the first day. Vrexian tradition dictated distance for safety, but watching his mate cradle their son, watching young Vrex melt into her embrace with absolute trust. Safe for whom? Emma stood, stretching. "Well, I should probably get back to fixing that ventilation system. That's what I was doing before this little guy decided to practice being scary. She ruffled young Vrex's crest. You keep practicing that growl, buddy. You'll be super intimidating someday. Young Vrex chirped and nuzzled against Azila, but his eyes followed Emma. Wait, Azila said. Emma, could you show me more about how to interact with him like this? Emma paused, looking surprised. You want parenting tips from a human? I just worked at an animal rehab center back on Earth. What's an animal rehab center? Place where we took care of injured or orphaned wild animals until they could be released. Lots of babies who needed socializing and... Emma stopped. Oh. You guys have been treating him like a wild animal in rehab, not like a family member. The silence that followed was profound. That's exactly what we've been doing, Azila said quietly. Emma's expression softened. He's not a dangerous patient you're managing. He's your kid, your family. Yeah, he's got sharp bits, but so do a lot of species children. You teach them, guide them, love them. The sharp bits don't change that. Young Vrex reached one small paw up to touch Azila's face. Claws retracted, gentle, seeking connection. And Azila, centuries of Vrexian tradition crumbling in an instant, pressed her forehead to her son's and whispered, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry we didn't know. Kael'thas had to look away from the screen. His vision was blurring. He cleared his throat roughly. Security second. Note in the log. Code Amber resolved. No injuries. Human Johnson receives commendation for teaching us how to be parents, his second offered quietly. Something like that. Within an hour, Emma's afternoon had transformed from routine maintenance to impromptu parenting consultant. No, see, you're still doing the dominance posture, Emma explained to Kael'thas, who had finally left the security center to meet his son properly. The massive Vrexian commander stood awkwardly in the corridor, trying to figure out how to interact with young Vrex without reverting to traditional protocols. Relax your shoulders. Get down to his level. Kael'thas lowered himself to the floor with the caution of someone defusing a bomb. Young Vrex watched his father with curiosity, head tilted. Now what? Kael'thas asked, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. Let him come to you, Emma said. Don't force it. Just be present. Maybe offer your hand like I did. Kael'thas extended his clawed hand slowly. Young Vrex approached, sniffed it. Then, to everyone's shock, pressed his head against his father's palm. The sound Kael'thas made was somewhere between a gasp and a choke. He's soft. Of course he's soft, Emma laughed. He's a baby. Here, scratch behind his crest like this. She demonstrated, and young Vrex leaned into his father's touch, chirping contentedly. Kael'thas looked up at Azila, his expression raw. We've missed 6 months of this. Then don't miss any more, Emma said gently. By the time Emma finally returned to the ventilation system, word had spread. 3 more Vrexian families had requested meetings. The station's xenopsychologist wanted to observe. The Galactic Coalition's Child Development Board had sent 7 urgent communications requesting information. Emma stared at her comm device in bewilderment. I fixed a vent and played with a kid. Why's everyone acting like I discovered? Fire? Because, Azila said, having followed Emma down the corridor with young Vrex trotting beside her. You did something we never thought possible. You showed us our children aren't threats to be managed. They're family to be loved. Young Vrex chose that moment to practice his growl again, this tiny rumble that barely echoed in the corridor. Emma grinned. Yeah, buddy, very scary. Now let your mom get back to work, okay? But as she returned to her repairs, she could hear Azila cooing to young Vrex, using the same gentle tones Emma had demonstrated. Could hear the cub's happy chirps in response. Just Tuesday, Emma muttered to herself, pulling out her tools. Absolutely just another Tuesday. The commissary was unusually crowded when Emma arrived for dinner. She noticed the silence that fell as she entered, dozens of eyes from multiple species tracking her movement. Hi, Emma grabbed a tray, suddenly self-conscious. A Calarian engineer approached cautiously. "Is it true? You domesticated a Vrexian juvenile in under 30 minutes." Emma nearly dropped her tray. "I didn't domesticate anything. I just played with a kid who wanted attention." "But Vrexian juveniles are—" "Babies," Emma interrupted firmly. "They're babies. Predator babies, sure, but still babies. They need love and boundaries and play, just like any other species' kids." The Calarian exchanged glances with a Centauran medical officer. "We've been monitoring Vrexian development protocols for decades. The distance-based approach was considered optimal for safety." Emma set her tray down with a soft thud. "Okay, look. I'm not a xenopsychologist or whatever, but back on Earth, we have this saying, it takes a village to raise a child. You know what happens to human kids who grow up isolated, who don't get physical affection or play or positive interaction?" She paused. "They develop behavioral problems, aggression, difficulty bonding. They act out because they're trying to get something, any kind of response." The silence was thoughtful now. "Young Vrex wasn't being aggressive," Emma continued. "He was being lonely. His growling, his threat displays. Those were a kid trying to get his parents' attention the only way he knew how. And when someone finally gave him gentle attention instead of defensive fear..." She smiled. "He became the sweetest little guy. But the danger," the Calarian started, "is managed through teaching, not isolation," Emma said. "You teach boundaries. You teach gentle behavior. You praise good choices and redirect bad ones. Yeah, it requires being close enough to actually interact. But that's called parenting." The commissary door opened and Azila entered with young Vrex walking calmly beside her. The cub's demeanor was completely different from this morning. Relaxed, confident, content. When he spotted Emma, his tail wagged and he made a happy chirp. "See?" Emma grinned as young Vrex approached, letting her scratch his crest. "Not scary, just a good boy who needed his family." Azila's expression was peaceful, in a way Kael'thas had reported she hadn't been since their son hatched. "Emma's agreed to help other families," she announced. "We're starting socialization groups." Emma laughed. "I'm running puppy classes for baby apex predators. My mom would be so proud." 2 weeks later, Section 7's recreational area had been transformed into what Emma called Cub Socialization Hour. 5 Vrexian juveniles tumbled over each other under their parents' watchful, and now actively engaged, eyes. "Gentle paws, Vix," one mother called as her daughter got too enthusiastic. The cub immediately retracted her claws, and her mother praised her warmly. Emma watched from the sidelines, sipping coffee while young Vrex napped against her leg. Kael'thas approached, looking bemused. "The Vrexian homeworld has requested you as a cultural consultant," he said. "They're offering significant compensation." Emma snorted. "I'm a maintenance tech who likes animals. Tell them to hire an actual child psychologist. They want the human who revolutionized our approach to family." "I just played with a kid," Emma protested. Young Vrex stirred, yawned, and produced a tiny practice growl in his sleep. Emma smiled, scratching behind his crest. "Yeah, buddy, very fierce." Kael'thas watched his son, relaxed, happy, bonded, and felt something shift in his chest. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for showing us what we were missing." Emma shrugged. "He's a good boy. You just needed to see it." Her comm buzzed. "Johnson, ventilation system in Section 12 needs attention." And I'm back to my actual job. Emma gently moved young Vrex to his father and stood. "Same time tomorrow for playgroup?" "Wouldn't miss it," Kael'thas said, cradling his son properly for the first time.